Immigration. That is the big story of today with the Supreme Court decision. You said today that you're deeply disappointed the Supreme Court didn't invalidate the entire immigration law. For people who don't know, they did invalidate 3 of the 4 parts. This is from Bloomberg. Berkley said the ruling emphasizes the need for Congress to pass a comprehensive immigration overhaul that provides a pathway to legal status, quoting now, for those that go to the back of the line, learn English, pay a fine and back taxes, and pass a criminal background check. You also said in the statement that you would force even more people into the shadows. How?
Okay, look, I was always opposed to the Arizona law, and I thought it was unconstitutional when it was first passed. I'm very glad that the Supreme Court deemed that 3 out of the 4 provisions of this law are unconstitutional, and I will bet money, a very little amount of money, that that as these lawsuits that are bubbling up now that impact that 4th provision, once they get to the Supreme Court, that's going to be, the 4th one will be invalidated
the 4th provision,
as well.
in case people don't know, is if someone's arrested for another crime, that they can then check their immigration status. Now this has been going on already. The federal and state governments have these things called secure communities programs where they do this all the time. I read a piece in the National Journal this morning where they said this isn't really going to change much. They gutted this law, and you're still disappointed.
Look, because I think the entire law should have been deemed unconstitutional. Unlike my opponent that not only praised the Arizona law, he thinks we should bring it here to Nevada.
I should have said detained, by the way, not arrested. It's just if people are detained that they can do this.
Look, why? Because you look different, and that's the sole reason. And I think this brings a very good point, and you mentioned it in your intro. The fact of the matter is we need to pass comprehensive immigration reform on the federal level, or we're going to have 50 different states with 50 different laws. Now, my opponent is opposed to comprehensive immigration reform. So let's take
really? He doesn't say I'm opposed to comprehensive. He sees it a different way than you do. Can you show me somewhere where Dean Heller said that he's opposed to comprehensive?
Look,
no one's
he's
opposed
to the DREAM Act, opposed to comprehensive immigration reform, thinks the Arizona law is just great, thinks it should be law here in the state of Nevada. We have obviously different thinking on these issues dramatically, and the public's going to have a big choice, a very definitive choice to make in November.
Comprehensive immigration reform. You also mentioned comprehensive immigration reform when it was announced about the president not wanting to deport certain young undocumented folks here. Aren't you disappointed in the president on comprehensive immigration reform?
In what way?
He said he was going to do something about it during his campaign. What has he done? He never made it a priority, did he, Congresswoman?
Look,
did he? Did he ever? Tell me when he made it a priority, the president.
I think that the president is very much on record for supporting comprehensive immigration reform. It's
on record, but what has he done? Tell me about the bills he's introduced.
The president doesn't introduce pieces of legislation.
He could, though.
The members of the United States Congress do.
Now you're giving me a civics lesson. You know what I mean.
To, John.
You know what I mean. He has not made this a priority
John,
until 5 months before the election. He essentially flouts Article 2, Section 3 of the U.S. Constitution and says, I'm going to do this. Isn't that what happened to pander to the Hispanic community?
We have a serious problem. The Republicans will not help. They have blocked every effort in the United States Congress on the DREAM Act, on comprehensive immigration reform, in order to get something passed that would be important for this nation. And then they cry foul when the president decides that he's going to move forward. So, no, the president is on record, the Democratic Party is on record for supporting the DREAM Act, which the Republicans voted against.
The DREAM Act,
supporting comprehensive immigration.
I know you're going to go through this again.
Absolutely.
The DREAM Act was at the end of 2010 that Harry Reid tried to get it through the Senate. A year and a half later, suddenly the president wakes up, look, I can do this all by myself, even though a year ago he said he couldn't.
Wait a minute. What has changed? What has changed since 2010? The Republicans refused to address the DREAM Act. My opponent's on record is opposing it. So what do you expect me to do? You want us to keep voting on legislation that we know has no hope of passing because the Republicans won't work with the Democrats in order to pass comprehensive immigration reform?
You really think that this was a policy decision by the administration?
I think it's a good policy, absolutely.
Really? To take
a
very complex issue and just say, oh, you know what? I said a year ago I can't do this on my own, but now when the Hispanic vote is critical to my re-election, it might help Shelley Berkley, I'll go for it.
Look, let me give you a reality check of what's happening on the ground. What we're talking about here are young people that were brought to this country by their parents through no fault of their own. They had no say in it. For some of these kids, they've been here since they were 6 months old, a year old. They go through our high schools. They graduate successfully. They go on to college. Now, you're telling me that these youngsters ought to be deported because they're here in this country through no fault of their own? And what about our young men and women, our Hispanic men and women that have been here for years? They volunteer for our armed forces. They go to Afghanistan. They put their lives at risk for us. They make tremendous sacrifices. They come back to the country they love and they're willing to die for, and we're going to deport them? That is absolutely, not only is it cruel, it's bad for the United States of America. And that's what the president was correcting.